Welcome back to the channel. I am your host Osa. Today we're going to see a video about male suicide. I guess a TED Talk by Steph Slack. This is a few years old, so if you've probably seen it already, if not, there's a good chance you probably have seen it. If you are familiar with TED Talks or do watch it a lot, but I found the video very interesting. I kind of do want to react to it. But before we start off with the video, make sure to like and comment on the video, so it helps out with the algorithm and stuff like that, so that more people can view the video, and so that the video can reach out to more people, so that they can view it themselves. All right. So again, like and just put a comment on the video. Any comment at all. You can say what's good. You can say something positive, negative. It doesn't really matter. But again, like, comment on the video. All right. So let's get started.
Did you know that by the end of this event, 3 men in the UK will have died by suicide? I can still remember exactly where I was when my dad called me to tell me that they found my uncle. He had taken his life, and it had taken 3 weeks to find his body. Richard was 47. He was a doctor, super smart, creative, artistic. He spoke new languages with ease. He played and wrote music, and he understood science and maths like no one else I knew. He was the kind of kid you'd really hate at school, right? He saved people's lives for a living, and yet he decided to take his own. I'd like to take you back to 2010. I was at my new flat in Brighton having dinner with a friend, about to start my 3rd year of university, when my dad calls me to tell me that they found my uncle. That feeling, that sinking feeling in your stomach when your heart drops all the way down, and all you can think is, what could I have done to stop that from happening? That feeling is not something I wish anyone ever has to experience.
Some weird reason, male suicide, or the topic itself, is such a taboo, or a topic that's not necessarily, people don't really like to bring up for some reason. I have no idea why. And the rates for male suicide is extremely high. I think I'll put the rate somewhere around over here, but it's extremely high, and it's a real problem across the world. Yet somehow that people tend to be like, they don't even mention it, as they kind of think of it as something that's just, hey, this is a regular thing, regular stuff, a guy, some man died of depression, so what, and it's really weird. Like, it doesn't really get the attention it desperately deserves. Hopefully, maybe now we can probably, us as a collective can probably shed a light on that, hey, male suicides are a big deal and people don't seem to care. They just think of it as, it's just an everyday thing, because men are going through it. Men are very, very much stressed out right now. Men are being backed up in the corner and not finding any type of solutions as to how to get out of that corner because of how society is today. All right, but again, let's continue with the video, see what else she says.
Men are facing a crisis. How many men do you think die by suicide each day in the UK? Have a guess. Raise your hand if you think it's under 5. Raise your hands. Under 5? Under 10? It's 12. That's 1 man every 2 hours. While we're all enjoying our day, we're going to lose 12 men to suicide today. In my work, we talk a lot about the fact that 76% of all suicides are male, and that this silent killer is claiming the lives of more men under 45 than anything else. And I can't help but find myself asking, why is that? Doesn't that trouble you? Because it troubles me. These are our brothers, fathers, uncles, partners, sons. These are our friends, and they decide to die. I think there are some hard questions we need to ask about male suicide.
There's a lot of hard questions we need to ask. A lot of hard questions and discussions that need to be had. Because this is a video. Hold on, let me see. This is a 2-year-old video, and the problem still has not been addressed yet, right? I think people are avoiding the topic now because it's popular now to kind of shit on men now because, hey, patriarchy, right? Or who cares about men's feelings or what men's wants and needs? It's a popular thing now, but at the same time, like it's real, like whether you like it or not, you need men for a functioning society. You need them, regardless of how you feel as whatever part of the LGBTQ community you represent or whatever. You need men for a functioning society. That's factual. That's not an opinion. That's not something to be argued about. That's a factual statement. You need men for a functioning society, and the fact that men are dying and yet you somehow don't seem to be bothered by that. Yeah, and it's also dying at a rate that's alarmingly high. But yet somehow people are just not bothered by it. Instead, they'd rather talk about women's rights, LGBTQ things, community, etc., right? But a big issue that's consistently ignored is never really addressed, right? That needs to change. That absolutely needs to change, right?
I don't believe there is anything wrong with men having suicidal thoughts. But is there something wrong with how we react to suicide being thought about? Let me explain. We'll all die at one point or another, right? Our bodies will fail us and we'll die of disease or old age. Or we'll have our lives taken from us, maybe in a tragic accident. So, isn't it perfectly normal to consider being in control of our own death? Yes, suicide is intentional, but does that automatically make it wrong? I believe suicide is preventable, and I believe we should do everything in our power to prevent it. But I also believe there's nothing inherently wrong in thinking about our own death. I've considered what it's like to die. I'd like to ask you all to close your eyes just for a minute. I promise nothing scary will happen if you close your eyes. Now raise your hands if you've ever had a really bad day that's left you feeling maybe stressed or upset. Okay, keep your eyes closed and keep your hands raised if that bad day or bad week or bad month has ever led you to think about harming yourself or taking your own life. Thank you. Put your hands down and then open your eyes. That was about half of this room. I invite you to consider what might be different if we didn't see having suicidal thoughts as wrong, and what that might mean for the men in our lives thinking of suicide.
I disagree with that. I vehemently disagree with that. Now, under the premise of we're going to all, die at some point, yeah, sure, absolutely. That's inevitable, obviously. It's part of the life cycle, You're born, you grow up, you live your life, and then eventually at some point in the future, you're going to be gone. But, and of course, suicidal thoughts, that's tricky because to me, how I kind of interpret that is that part of you is like when she said wants to control that, right? There's part of you is thinking of you know what, I want to end it now, and let me not, continue on with the hardships and trials and tribulations of life being there, and we kind of don't, and et cetera, whatever. But in how I've kind of seen things, that we don't necessarily control when to take, when we don't control when we get life, to be frank, right? Like, we are born in this world without us really having a choice in the matter, but at the same time, we don't get to choose when to end it either. Like, we obviously, I'm a firm believer that yes, we are put into this world for a purpose. Like, everyone has some reason of being here, whether it's minuscule as being a farmer, or I don't even call farmers minuscule, and as minuscule as being some sort of something low rate, and this is not to cut janitors. I respect janitors a lot, but something small that you might view small, whatever it is that you view small in the world, that you don't have that much of an impact, to being some prime minister or president or some sort of multi-billionaire, whatever the case may be, or some owner of a business, of a multi-corporation business, right? Whatever in that fucking spectrum you have, or maybe it's even like a humanitarian or some sort of like a preacher, or whatever the case may be. There's a reason why we were all put in this world, and the fact that we didn't find that reason and we want to decide, hey, you know what, life is too hard, let me end it. Like, I think that's kind of, because I do believe in a higher being. All right, I do believe in God. Yeah, I definitely do believe in God, and I think that's a little disrespectful to God who put us to God who put us in this position to live. Because I don't know what's the ratio it is for one sperm cell to get to a certain egg, out of the millions of sperm cells that are ejaculated into a fallopian hole that races to the eggs itself, right? So out of the millions of sperm cells, one cell touches that egg. I don't know, I forgot the ratio of it though, but it's a crazy ratio. And for you to just say, you know what, fuck it, that's more, that leans more towards that there's some sort of lack of fulfillment in your life that you haven't really gotten to, right? There's some lack of fulfillment in your life that you haven't really reached yet, right? So she mentions the doctor. Like, we can see, like, her uncle who was a doctor, who was seemed lively, like, seemed like he was fine. That's surface level stuff. That's literally surface level stuff. Internally, how is he feeling? Is there stuff that he himself was trying to accomplish? Has he achieved it yet? Is it stuff that things that seem to be bothering him more that he kept inside? Like, a lot of men don't like to talk about things like that, because people tend to use that shit as a way to hurt men, basically, right? So they kind of use that as ammunition, and then they hit it, they put it right back to his face, and now you're just reliving that type of trauma all over again. So we don't know. That's all surface level stuff. There's a lot of questions internally that we have to look in ourselves as men and try to find those questions and try to find those answers ourselves, because it could be vital. It literally could be a life and death situation where we have to find the answers of what it is that we want out of life, what it is that we want to achieve, what it is that we are desiring to accomplish, and follow that path, right, as much as we can. Because obviously trying to find our reason for being here. I think that's really the big thing. What is the reason that we are here? And if that reason is something like an achievement or a goal to reach, or some sort of accomplishment to get to, right? Is that something that we can work towards, or does that require us most of our lives to work towards? Whatever that question is, the answer is different for each individual man. Each individual man, it's a different answer for any man you ask, right? But the question needs to be asked. I think that's really the main thing. I think that's really the main problem here. Like, what is it that you're looking for? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? And is it attainable? Can you attain it? Or does that mean you need to take, or do you have to keep trying? Stuff, whatever question it is that you need to answer, that's something that you have to answer on your own, but ask the question. And I'm telling you, I think it will really set a lot of guys, at least straight, or at least focused into what they need to get done, what they need to get accomplished. I firmly believe that. But in terms of like the connotation of suicide itself, maybe changing how we feel about suicide, I don't agree with that at all. I think suicide is appropriately rationalized amongst the public at large. I think suicide is something that no one should really decide to choose. And I understand certain situations where it's like, hey, there might not be there might not be any alternatives, or it might not be any type of like any other answers that you might have, but trust me, there's always an answer. Even if it's like the simplest thing as maybe cutting everything off, like, just going full, what's the word? just cutting yourself off from like internet, cutting yourself off from family members, let's go in full like loner mode for a minute, for a good minute before you like, you know, acclimate yourself back into society again. You know, that could be an answer right there. You know, it could be as simple as maybe, you know, doing something different in a different like a different routine. You know, to kind of just to switch things up a little bit. You know, something as simple as that. You know, it doesn't have to be something you don't have to. And another thing too, you don't have to find the answers to everything at once. This is something that you will gradually find the answers to as you continue, you know, chucking away at the question as like, you know, hey, maybe I should try this, maybe I should try that, or maybe I should, you know, do this to kind of switch things up a little bit, you know. That's something that's you're going to keep finding out as you know, keep chipping away at it, you know. At least just keep chipping away at it. Just keep chipping away at it. I promise you'll find an answer, right? Like this suicide rarely, very rarely, if at all, is an answer at all. It's an answer to begin with. Very rarely it is. Very rarely suicide is the answer to begin with. Very rarely. All right. Let's continue the video.
Let's go back to my Uncle Richard. For most of his life, he experienced what was most likely bipolar, and he had suicidal thoughts on more than one occasion. In fact, 6 years before his death, he attempted to take his life. The sad fact was that Richard lived in a time where suicide wasn't considered something that you spoke about. It was swept under the carpet and a cause of shame amongst families. There was something wrong with it. I mean, it was only in 1961 that we stopped making suicide a crime. Richard's parents were medics, an anaesthetist and a nurse, and they didn't understand suicide either. They didn't think that it was real, and I think they were probably in denial about what was happening with Richard. What happened to my uncle isn't my grandparents' fault. Suicide is complex and rarely attributed to any one factor. But when I reflect on Richard's experience and on how we still struggle to speak about suicide today, nothing's really changed. We still struggle to talk about it. We label it as abnormal or unusual, and we make men wrong for having suicidal thoughts. We say that they're unwell or that they need to get better. And because we think of it this way, it stops us from being able to talk about it, and we stay silent instead. And suicide remains shrouded in this stigma.
That's true. What she's saying here is very true, especially when it comes to men and male suicide rates, right? The fact that you're thinking about it, the fact that the thoughts crossing your mind, that's just something that's like, oh, not well, get over it, you know, like, hey, or something that like, you know, that shouldn't be happening, or like something that's looked down upon, like, oh, you really thinking about suicide, man? Like, man, you be alright, you know. I think that type of notion of suicide, I think that should change. That should absolutely change, because in order for you, for people to find a solution to it, you have to first talk on it, first acknowledge it and then actually talk about it. That, hey, you know, hey, I'm having these thoughts, you know, or I'm struggling here. Like, I need help. Like, having men being comfortable enough to be able to say that, I think that's the first step. And that type of stigma, that's the first step in recovery. And that type of stigma needs to change immediately. That's absolutely true, all right?
That stigma is only perpetuated by irresponsible and sensationalized journalism that happens in the cases of celebrity suicide. Just look at some of the reporting around Anthony Bourdain's recent death. When I was thinking about how best to explain this point, it made me think about sex and sex education. Stick with me, okay? It's really uncomfortable for us to talk to kids about sex. It's so tempting to think, if we don't talk about it, it won't happen, our kids won't have sex. But we know that teenage pregnancy and STIs are the risk if we don't have that conversation. And we take those risks seriously. We introduce sex education into schools, and it's now compulsory across the UK. And I mean, it's far from perfect. But what it has been shown to do is to improve positive attitudes towards safe sex, to delay sex, and to reduce teenage pregnancy when used alongside other methods. With suicide, we know it's a myth that talking about it will plant that idea in someone's head. And if suicide is claiming the lives of more men under 45 than anything else, Isn't it time we just start accepting that suicidal thoughts are something that happen, and instead start talking openly and responsibly about it? I don't think there is anything wrong with men having suicidal thoughts. But perhaps there is something wrong with our expectations of men in society that lead them to have those thoughts. Let's think about that.
Expectations. Male expectations hasn't changed since for however long you can remember. The expectation has always been high to be a set provider, to be the rock, to be the solid rock, this foundation that doesn't falter, that doesn't move. That's always been the expectation. Yet, it's getting more and more harder to be that type of man because, jobs are not being there at all. Society is changing constantly under our feet. And more and more, it's getting away from like the needs or it's getting away from more examples of what it means to be a man, right? Fathers not being in households, television's kind of shunning away against traditionally male roles or traditionally male type of shows, kind of mixing it up to kind of fit a certain narrative. That in itself, that's contributing to it, right? So when a young boy grows up to be an adult male and is now expected to produce or to produce as this provider or as this solid foundation, as he's now being expected to do that, he has no type of examples to show him. He has not seen any type of examples that shows him how to do that. He's now ends up in a place where he's struggling to understand what that means, right? Now people are trying to change narratives to say, you can definitely be, this certain a certain type of person but society is saying another thing, will react to it another way. And it's unfortunate, right? So I think what needs to really happen is that, hey, society is expecting that boy to become a certain type of male whenever they grow up to be an adult. Then from childhood upward, society should be able to have ways to teach these young boys how to become men, so that when they get up there, they can handle the pressure that society is going to eventually fall down on their shoulders. Like it's a known thing. People act like, we don't have to face it. No, like women don't have to face this. Other groups of people don't have to face it. This is a strictly for male things. Other groups decide to choose to face it. Like you could choose not to, you'll be all right. But this is something that's mandatory. Like Chris Rock said, like only women and children and animals get unconditional love, but males' love is transactional. And that is unfortunately the case here, right? So, in order for young men growing up to not end up faltering under the pressure of what society already puts on top of our heads, they should be able to grow up and learn how to be able to function around when they grow up, when they are young adult. They are not young adults, when they are adults and moving around the world and trying to navigate through the world and find their position in life. So that's definitely a very, very important thing. And obviously for some reason being looked down upon because, hey, patriarchy, right? Let's continue on a little bit more.
What does it mean to be masculine? What does it mean to be a man? Society tells us men should be strong, dependable, and able to provide for their family. There's very little research into the reasons why men suicide, but the recent research that does exist speaks about how men's high suicide rates are linked to risk factors such as history of being abused as a child, single status or relationship breakdown, and financial difficulty or unemployment. So that means that if you're a man and you've had a troubled childhood, you're still searching for the one, or you're worried about money, you're at risk of suicide. How many of us know men in that situation? I mean, I've definitely just described Richard, and I've probably described half of millennial men in the UK. Unsurprisingly, these risk factors are linked to those traditional notions of masculinity, of being strong, dependable, and able to provide for your family. It seems as though when men feel they can't meet those expectations, they make themselves wrong for that. The research backs this up too. Just last year, there was a paper confirming that there is a link between men feeling unable to fulfill the stereotypical characteristics of masculinity and suicidal thoughts. Now, I imagine a lot of us in this room don't agree with those stereotypes, but some of us probably do, or at least know someone who does. How many of us have been guilty of saying man up at some point in our lives? I know I have. The conversation is starting to change. There are great campaigns like BBC Three's Real Men Do Cry and Calm's Ludicrous that are trying to shift those perceptions of men and masculinity.
That's wrong. The idea of shifting what it is to be a man is what's actually putting people in this position to begin with. Matter of fact, because people don't know what it is to be a man, that's why the suicide rates are as high as it is, right? So, because she mentions about racial status, financial burdens, and also childhood traumas that men do struggle, that men with suicide rates have, right? So the solution of changing the narrative, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think more so is to show what it is to be a man. I think emphasizing on that portion makes more sense to me, because the idea of shifting it has already been happening. It's been happening for the past few years now, and look where we are now. Like, the rates are even increasing now. There's a lot more very emotional men that don't know how to control their emotions, who end up becoming very dangerous individuals. And what was that? What was the cause of that? There's a multitude of reasons too. I'm not going to list a whole bunch of reasons for it. There's a lot of reasons for it. But the main reason is that there was no type of example to show them, like, hey, this is you, a type of strong example that, hey, this is what it means to be a man. Like, this is what it means, that this is the burden that it is that you have inherited. And to kind of not see it as a burden, but as like a responsibility, right? So in turn, and she also mentions about, we'll speak about the financial part of it, where men don't necessarily feel, if they can't meet up to financial, certain financial levels, they feel inherently bad about it. I believe that's just society's way of kind of putting men down. Like, that's society's reaction, like, hey, you are at a certain age and you can't do certain things. That's society on its own. That's a natural thing. Like, society will keep doing that, regardless of whether you have this discussion or not. It's up to the man to be able to, handle that type of cautionary reaction that society is going to drop down on their head if they don't get to a certain, whatever financial status that society tends to want people to reach, right? So it's up to you as the man to decide how you're going to react to it, how you're going to handle that type of pressure, and then use that pressure in order to as motivation, so that you can be able to get to where you want to be, not what society says, but where you want to be, so that you're comfortable, and that, if you do end up bringing up a family in, like, your family's good, that's up to you, not society. This is stuff that people don't necessarily like to teach young boys or young men. They just, let them go on and grow up, talk about, have them try to be in touch with their feelings instead of learning how to control it and learning how to express it properly. They have the feelings go wild, crazy. This is how you get certain people, like, I won't call out any people's names though, but you have certain people who are just emotionally unaware or unintelligent, and they tend to see situations as they are and react to it accordingly. So having the idea of having to shift the idea of masculinity is something I definitely do not agree with at all. I think more so masculinity in of itself, or what it originally was, what it is, not what it originally was, what it is, should be prompted up so that we don't have so that we can lessen some of the situations that we have right now, and have men that are functioning in the society, are well-functioned men in society, so that we don't have any, serial killers or, emotionally unintelligent or emotionally unstable men walking around, because that's dangerous. That's extremely dangerous, right? I'm going to stop the video here. I think I'll leave the rest of the TED Talk for you guys to look at. There's a lot of points that are good and bad. It's a little bit of a mixed bag in this one. and it's also coming from, obviously, you know, someone who's not a male. So there's some, it's her interpretation of that, right? But it's good that people are starting to, even 2 years ago now, you know, at least the conversation was, you know, brought up. But like, when was the last time you heard about male suicide rates, right? It's like, you don't hear that. That's something that doesn't happen, right? But yeah, I'm gonna leave the video down in the comment section. I'll leave a link in the description of the video. So yeah, again, like, comment, share the video, subscribe if you have not subscribed already. Hit the bell next to the subscribe button so that you get notified whenever I drop a new video. And in the comment section, leave a comment like, what do you think about male suicide rates? Is it still a huge problem? Is it being addressed properly, or is it being addressed enough to your liking? Are there solutions now coming in to help stop the rise of male suicides? And if so, are those solutions, do you think those solutions are valid enough to help at least cut the suicide rate down a little bit, right? So again, until next time, YouTube, take care. Let me start with congratulations, sooner or later appreciation for all the work you've put in. Damn, you came farther than the depths of the ocean water. Still undiscovered, Earl Jones will be prouder. Still chasing things out loud, scope change. For better or worse, I still left unhinged.